Welcome everybody. We are back with another Organics Q&A with myself, Chad Westport, and from KIS Organics, Tad Hussey, who is walking around looking for a tripod at the moment. But other than that, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I've been working in the garden today. I look forward to showing you guys. It's kind of see there.
Yeah.
Re-amending my beds. So yeah, just a little scatterbrained, but good.
That's I'm glad you joined us, and it's kind of cool. We have, some things that we can talk about. Chat, we are definitely here for you. We're going to be keeping our eyes on the questions coming in. Sometimes I will star them and get to them once the topic comes up, but if it applies directly to what we're talking about at the moment, I will try to slide them in. So today we're going to be kind of freestyling it a little bit. I've got some awesome books that I want to talk to you guys about because, a lot of us, particularly as home growers, are starting our journey into organics. And we know maybe a little bit of what it may be, but books are great. You get to learn a lot more. So I've got some of the ones that have helped me along the journey. Tad's going to mention possibly a few of the people that he looks towards as well for education, because you combine all of that, you can become a dynamo. But more importantly, we've got some beds to amend. These are just kind of the things that come up. So Tad, why today? Why did you need to amend your beds? And can you turn your phone sideways?
Yeah. Nope.
Nope. Damn.
Hold on.
Okay. There should be
There
an
we go.
auto-locking feature.
Yeah.
There.
Better?
Awesome.
Better.
Oh, so much
Okay.
better. Yeah, you feel the whole
All right.
screen now.
Cool.
But why today? Why did the beds need it?
So I went down yesterday to our farm location and I grabbed all of the amendments I need. So I'll just show you guys what I'm looking at here. So I got a soil test done when I still had plants in these beds behind me, those beds.
Okay.
I got a soil test done. About 2 weeks left out from the end of the cycle. These are from Logan Labs. It's a
Okay.
saturated paste and a standard test. We sell them on our website for the same price as Logan has them. And then Brandon here at KIS, you should get him on the show. Maybe he could take my place one of
Yes.
these weeks, because I'm actually going to be going to Melbourne soon to give a talk over there at a conference. So I'm going to be gone for 10 days, and I think the timeline's not going to work out. So I've been meaning to tell you this.
Okay.
Maybe Brandon can fill in.
Well, hey, I'm going to be in the Netherlands next month. So if it's next month, we'll both be off.
Oh, okay. Maybe
we'll
we
figure
take a
that
month
out.
off. All right. Anyway,
We'll figure that
Brandon wrote me a 6-page recommendation. That's the standard one that we do for people who submit a soil test for analysis. I just took the notes of that. Oh, let me see if I can get it on the screen. And this is what I needed per yard. And I didn't want to use the Calphos because we were out of it. And the Fertaz is high in lead. That'd be the other soft rock phosphate blend. So I'm not going to be adding that this time, and I'm going to have him adjust my recommendation to use the amendments that I want to use in my garden. So that's a cool feature that we offer. So yeah, I got all that, and then basically, let me see if I have it here. I think I took them all already into the other room, but I took all those amendments and I mixed them up in this bucket. Sorry, it's hard to get everything on the screen.
I understand.
And that's what it looks like. And so that's enough for one of these beds. So I'm doing each bed individually just to make sure I can mix them up and apply them homogenously. And then I'm just going to dig it in.
How deep are those beds?
Great questions.
Are they 3x3 as well, or 4x4?
They're 4x4s. I think they're about 18 inches deep. We typically say you only need to go to 10 inches, which works out to a half a yard per bed, which is really nice math. And we know that works because we've done it in a lot of commercial facilities. But since I had the soil and I wanted to, I just filled it up a little bit higher. So I'm probably like 14, 15 inches, which is overkill. But I'm only digging into the first 6 to 8 inches of soil when I re-amend anyway. So yeah, that's what I have going on right now.
Right on, man. Well, I mean, good timing for the show. We were talking earlier. I had to get something done in the garden earlier in the week, and I was just like, this one of the companies I write for needs a video on it. I should just turn on the camera and get her done. So that's kind of what we're doing today. Now, some of those amendments, you said you didn't want the cow phos. Why in particular?
So I did want CalPhos. That's a soft rock phosphate that tests pretty clean. We've done heavy metal testing
Okay.
on all these products. The Fertaz is just a different company, a different mine that's a little dirtier. It's got a little more, I think, lead in it.
Hmm.
All these amendments have trace elements of heavy metals, but we just want to
Okay.
limit that. So like I didn't add any kelp this round, for example, because that's going to bring in a lot of arsenic. So for
Okay.
those folks that don't want to do the testing, let's just say you have an even smaller garden than I do and you don't want to do the testing. We do have, this is a shameless plug. This is our nutrient pack. And essentially you could mix this in at a cup per 10 gallons of soil. And that's going to get you pretty darn close to the recommendations most of the time anyway. And it's going to save you on the soil testing. We can ship these for free.
This is not a shameless plug. I actually use it. I use this
Thanks,
stuff,
Chad.
so not a
Yeah.
shameless plug.
Yeah, so it's all the minerals and nutrients. It is a plug. Yeah, all the minerals and nutrients that we put into our soil mix, we send them separately to you, and then you can source your own peat moss, perlite, pumice, and compost, whatever mix you want to run there. Or you could even grab something like Pro Mix or Happy Frog to mix your own soil if shipping you soil is too expensive. So that's the
Yeah,
idea.
that's usually where the expense comes in, because I've looked at that with a lot of different things. Because there's things I'd love to try out there, but shipping soil is just so ridiculous that having the recipes online and allowing people to select their choices and then kind of put it together and being able to add the nutrient pack, yeah, that's a great way to go because it's shipping soil is stupid. Um, just
Yeah.
to put it simply. Um,
So
cool.
Chad,
Okay.
what's your reamendment process? Is it similar to what I'm doing, or how do you reamend your soil?
Yep. I kind of go as I am feeding. Or well, I feed as I go along. My soil, I move
Oh,
outside typically when I'm done because I don't have beds. I'm still in pots. But outdoors I have beds, and that's where I do the amending to the soil, and that's where I do more of the kind of living soil organic practices that we talk here. Indoors, I still use a bag soil, and I tend to use the nutrient pack. So I just kind of put that on preemptively and just continually kind of scratch it in, water it in as the cycle goes along. Um, so yeah, it's not super scientific over here. Just kind of trust in the materials, and then obviously listen to the plants, read the plants, and through trial and error, basically doing a couple runs, I've got it to where I don't really skip a beat at all anymore. So it's
awesome.
it's been working
Awesome.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like
Yeah.
that because it's what one of the things that actually was going to come up in the books that I had, because this has been a question lately. And again, it's like I didn't know much about organic growing until probably about 10 years ago. That's really when it started to register for me. But that was more as far as like a commercial agricultural type of setting. I went and did the sustainable agriculture program in Skagit Valley. And we
Awesome.
got, a lot of like cool textbooks. The organic farming manual was one of them. And there's, a lot of good things in here. There's a lot of stuff about like starting up the land, potentially using livestock, what type of equipment you want, sourcing seeds, all of that stuff. It's not necessarily what we would think in cannabis. I just open it up to breeding and lambing, page. This page, it's nice too because when I went, I highlighted all the important stuff in all of my textbooks. So now I just get to like
Okay.
skip back to it. Starting seasons, field harvesting. But the question that I was getting to, which is something that's come up lately too, and this was using purchase soil amendment section. Obviously, I had this one highlighted too, but it's basically just like a word of warning. The word organic on a bag of fertilizer does not mean the product is certifiably organic. It means that it contains carbon. And that's something that I've heard from a few organic amendment or organic fertilizer producers. Now, is this like potentially a kind of a gray terminology where like it has carbon, so it's organic, but it might not really meet the definition of what we're thinking organic is? Because I'll admit I fell for it, if that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, there's differences between regulatory organics versus philosophical organics, I guess you could
Right.
say.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Um,
that's exactly my question, though. That's
yeah,
exactly the
and depend
question.
on who you talk to. Like, I know what things I'm very comfortable using in my garden, and I know why I use them, and I can explain that. But there's definitely products that I use that are not, I guess, 100% organic in the sense that they may have been um, chemically altered slightly or refined in a way that I'm comfortable with. But understanding that is, I think, really important. So you know what you're getting and what you're putting in your garden because you're growing food, you're growing medicine, you're growing something that you're going to be consuming at the very least. Um, so I think that's important. But like for example, gypsum is calcium sulfate. Some people, there's some, organic folks in the community that will not use sulfates. I don't personally
Okay.
understand that. It's a mined product. I think it works. It's one of my favorite things to add in my garden. But there's alternatives too. So if you have an opinion on it, and you can like, I use fish hydrolysate. It's stabilized with
Hmm.
phosphoric acid. It's to me, it's like a cheat code for getting available pee really easily from my plant. So it just depends. But I do think that getting this is something that Bryant Mason over at Soil Doctor Consulting has really harped into my brain that I think is an important way of looking at this. But getting small amounts of carbon into your soil consistently, which is what we do in organics, because most of the things that we have are carbon based already, is just a great way to keep your plants happy and healthy.
Okay, good. Thank you for the clarification there, because again, that's why we do these shows. Is we've
Oh,
oftentimes have scratched the surface.
that reminds me. So I could not put 100% organic on my label here in Washington State because I had rock dust in there, and that was an inorganic compound. So it's a little silly. So it
Right.
goes both ways, I guess.
Yeah, they're sometimes the overreach. I know, just like as far as like testing of cannabis, the aspergillus thing is something that I can relate. It's like, yeah, it's something to be aware of, but the level detectable that they throw up the flag at is like, are you kidding me? It's almost just like atmospheric levels. So yeah, and I had a question too, kind of speaking on this one. It came in from Dr. Chronic from one of the weeks, a few weeks, or from the episode a few weeks ago when we were talking about just dry amendments and some of the things that we're putting on there. And I'm kind of waiting for the the page to load now, but it involved alfalfa, which I did see on your list. And his question really is kind of, is alfalfa a good substitute for kelp to keep organic PGRs in the soil?
Uh, no, unfortunately,
Okay.
it's not.
Okay.
And the only reason I say this is because I had a podcast with a PGR guy, and the main PGR that people are thinking of is triacontanol. Unfortunately, which is something I learned from him, is that triacontanol is not very stable. So we're actually not really getting it if we're adding alfalfa meal. He said the only time you might get any actual triacontanol would be if you applied a heavy alfalfa mulch of fresh alfalfa.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not surviving into your soil, according to him. And he was an expert on PGRs. You can go back and check out the episode. Um, Jim something or other. Jim Barrett was his name. So yeah,
Jim.
because I always
And
thought
that,
I thought so too. But I don't really worry about PGRs too much in general because they're just plant growth regulators. They control the way the plant grows. Like you think of things like auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins. Um, we're getting those naturally in a lot of cases. We're not really trying to push the plant in one direction or another. We don't necessarily want, a super elongated stem, in terms of like internodal length or things like that, or necessarily,
right.
well, short is better in that regard. But I haven't found anything organic that really dramatically changes that, like we can do with synthetic chemicals. And since we're both organic guys, I haven't really messed with it, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Fair enough. And maybe kind of dovetailing on that one, Andy in the chat has a question. I'll blow this up here, make it more readable. But you're just kind of talking about rock dust. He says, does rock dust revitalize overworked soil and stimulate microbial activity? Other than the mineral or nutrient content, what does it have much of an effect on microbial activity? Does it help populations grow?
That's a great question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I've never really thought about it because when I'm adding rock dust, I'm always adding other amendments and fertilizers that I know stimulate microbial activity.
Okay.
That's a great question, Andy. I will say it doesn't have a lot of fertility in it other than trace minerals, typically. So I don't know that it would have a big impact on microbial growth. I can't imagine that it would. It could affect the tilth of the soil. It will give you trace minerals over a long period of time. But every rock dust brings in heavy metals. I saw someone ask about uh, glacial rock dust versus basalt earlier. And I just want to say, like, don't get too hung up on that. We use both in ours, but the basalt that we have, the mine source is actually a little bit cleaner even than the glacial. And so if I had to just pick one, I would just pick basalt, and I would probably add it at the beginning of my grow one time and then not really worry about adding it over and over again. So if you have to source one, no reason to source two. Just get one. Maybe a cup per cubic foot, half a cup per cubic foot initially, and then I wouldn't add it again just because we don't want to add more heavy metals. You'll get all the benefits that you need from it as a one-time application, in my opinion.
Okay. I was just curious as kind of what the cue is on that soil test to add something like that, because again, it seems like a very micro nutrient or something.
Yeah, we did trials with it actually so when we first were starting the company, I was reaching out to Coot, and his thing was initially was like, I think I would amend with like heavy levels of rock dust every cycle. Cause this was way before we ever thought about heavy metals. Um, and so I tried it and I didn't get the best results. I found the best results were actually adding in the same fertility that we add at the beginning of the cycle, like with our nutrient pack, or doing soil testing and then adding specific amendments. But to me, things like rock dust and kelp are great. Just don't use very much of them. Just go real light. Much lighter with the kelp than the rock dust. Um, yeah. Oh, and just real quick, one other thing. Someone asked levels of arsenic in the soil. 1 to 2 ppm is sort of the range we try to stay in. There's no data at this point that I'm aware of that shows what levels will translate into a fail or a toxic level of, arsenic or cadmium or lead, any of those. But in general, with our soils where we are at and where we see people passing and even the tightest states is sort of in that range. So hope that helps.
Is that something that will fluctuate, the level of arsenic specifically, that will fluctuate over the course of the grow? Like, will the plants be, uptaking some of that, or does it just really compound over the life of the soil where that arsenic level just increases indefinitely?
Yeah, I want to make a video about this because it's really it's sort of a mass flow equation. If we go back to like science in high school,
Science, what is that? We're talking
I know.
cannabis.
I have an engineer cannabis grower friend that kind of explained it to me best. So what we're trying to do, so the cannabis plant's going to pull up. Let's just stick with arsenic just to simplify. It's going to pull up arsenic every cycle. What we need to do is make sure that the amount of arsenic that comes up into the biomass of the plant, the roots, the leaf tissue, all of that is less than what is required for a pass in the state. So whatever the state regulation is, and it's going to vary widely depending on the state. And then we have to make sure that what we add into the soil in terms of fertility and specifically your water um, brings in less arsenic than's being taken out by the plant. And as long as what's coming in is less than what's going out, we should be, in theory, reducing the amount of arsenic every cycle. So that's kind of the way to look at it. It's like a giant system.
And that makes me wonder too. It's like the size of the funnel. You can only fit so much through a particular size of the funnel. And how I relate that is if these plants, cannabis was sitting in a just completely arsenic heavy soil, will it uptake enough to cause itself to fail, or does it have a just poor ability to uptake it? And is that why we're concerned?
Sorry, I was looking back through the comments there.
It
I think.
basically,
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was saying, just basically, does it, if it were sitting in an arsenic rich environment, does it have the ability to take up enough to cause it to fail, or will it only accept X amount in, each plant cycle?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors there, but it absolutely can take up enough to fail.
Okay. So that's why we worry about it in the soil.
Yeah, if your silica levels are low, the arsenic follows that same pathway as it was explained to me. So you can, if you can keep your SI levels up, that will help a lot. And then also keeping your pH up is the other thing. So those things both limit the amount of, specifically with arsenic at least, limit the amount of uptake that you're getting there. And I said a half a cup per cubic foot is a good starting point for the rock dust for whoever.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. I had started that one. Yep. About half cup. Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. With a name like Dude, we've got to make sure to get to it. So
yeah.
All right. Cool. I'll take that one off. Let's see here. State 3 TV. Thanks for joining here. He is a producer in Oregon who has some very awesome practices and some very amazing strains. So if you're in Oregon, look for State 3 Farms. But this is a great question. He says, can you talk about silica stopping heavy metals? Because you just said arsenic works on the similar pathway. So is there go ahead, explain.
Oh yeah, so silica is great. It has a ton of different plant benefits. I like to use potassium silicate. It helps with drought stress, heat stress, pretty much all types of stress. It helps with insect resistance, pest and pathogen resistance, makes your stalk stronger. It mitigates microtoxicities in the leaf tissue by helping spread them out in the leaf better. It's just all around the magic bullet and most amazing thing you can add. In terms of arsenic, though, it limits heavy metal uptake. And one of the reasons it does is because, as is explained to me with rice, it follows the same pathway in the plant. So if rice is grown in soil that's deficient in silica, it's going to take up more arsenic. So I assume the same would happen with cannabis, because there is research that shows with cannabis that higher SI reduces heavy metal uptake, specifically arsenic. So yeah, we try to keep our SI levels up using either wollastonite or potassium silicate, because depending on the type of silica, certain sources are more available than others. So it's important to have one that's going to be relatively available for your plant.
That kind of makes me wonder too, because again, it's like using the nutrient pack, and obviously there's other amendments out there too. But when we add these things to the soil, like let's say the nitrogen capability, is that available faster than maybe the silica would be, or because of microbial activity and many other factors? Again, I love pinning you to specifics when there's a million variables. But are they taken up at kind of like an even rate as far as timing goes, like the silica? Is that going to be absorbed quicker or faster than like nitrogen from the nutrient pack? Again, based on certain microbial populations.
I don't know that I know the answer to that, honestly. I don't know the rates of nutrient uptake for various macronutrients or micronutrients relative to other ones. What I will say is, the way I think about these things are sort of temperature. So I think about like in an indoor environment, you're in the right temperature. So temperature, so that the biology can be active. If it's really cold out and you add a nutrient pack or you add any nutrients to your soil, organic amendments, they're not really going to cycle all that well because it's too cold. If there's not enough water, so I think about hydrology, then the moisture won't be there to break down these amendments. The biology won't be able to really be happy if there's not enough water in there. They're not going to break down as quickly. And then the last thing I think about is particle size. So I don't know. Let me see if I can show you guys in here. So I don't know if that's showing it, but
Yep,
I
yep.
have all these different particle sizes in here. Some of
Hmm.
them, like the gypsum, is much finer than others. The sulfur, for example, is these little discs. That's going to take longer to break down. But if we have things that are smaller in particle size and finer, then they have a greater surface area, which means there's more bacteria, archaea, the more the microorganisms can start to break those down. So release rate has a lot to do with moisture, temperature, and particle size. And then that's assuming the biology is going to be there already in a lot of cases.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Though. That's a thank you again. That was kind of a light bulb moment for me. I'll admit it, because I already understand like dilution ratios from size in other aspects and areas of my life. So now that it's been put in that context with this, I simply know how to answer it. And that's the fun. That's the mechanisms. That's always the why behind what actually happens. And that's why it's important to, like read these books and go beyond just scratching the surface, because once you understand the mechanisms, or at least for me, once I understand like the mechanism, it gives me that visual. I'm a very visual learner. Like the book I've got to read 4 times. Show me once and I get it. But they're awesome, just like epiphany moments. You're like, well, duh, that was in front of me the whole time. But yeah, so thanks for explaining it that way, and I hope that helps
Yeah.
some other people too, because that's
Yeah.
again what we're here to do is just connect those dots.
Yeah, so you showed one book. Did you have other books that you really
Yeah,
wanted to share?
just a couple of quick ones is just like from my time at school, like a soil science book. The quickest way to piss off a soil science teacher is to call it dirt. I got over that pretty quickly. I think it was about 4
Yeah.
times, and it's soil. So but my main point, which is kind of the book, like the textbooks that I had, because they're a big agriculture, but there's always something that we can learn from big ag, like it's specific like crops that it tells you how
Yeah.
to manage, but there's a lot of transition or things that translate over. um this one I had, like managing just like root knot nematodes was a problem with this grape, the grapes that they had growing. And so there's just a lot of cool things in here that don't necessarily apply specifically to cannabis, but it gave me kind of a good foundation or overview of everything. And then we're
Yeah.
able to narrow it in more specifically for cannabis. And that was one thing I wanted to mention earlier when you were talking about, like arsenic and the rice hulls. It's great that we do have some cannabis specific studies, and we're starting to see more cannabis specific studies, but for the most part, we're looking at studies from other products, other crops, and then drawing assertions from that based on, well, I think cannabis acts in the same manner or has the same pathways. So have you been seeing like an influx of cannabis specific literature as well over the past few years? Or is that what
Yeah,
you lean to
so
first?
I don't. So I think
Okay.
honestly, you surprised me a little with those books. I think what you listed are the best resources in a lot of ways. It's like actual textbooks. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny because Bryant
Okay.
coined this term the other day at
I
the
love
Soil Summit,
textbooks. I'm sick.
and I love it. So I brought some books to my grow room to share too. So books like this, Teaming with Fungi, Jeff Lowenfels, good friend of mine, great book. Um, True Living Organics. Yeah. Oh, you got the whole
Oh,
series. So like these
oh yeah.
kinds of books, um, and not to call out Mr. Growit, but he just wrote this book. I wanted
Yep.
to give him a little prop because he
Yeah.
sent it to me. I need to read it. Bryant
Nice.
calls these types of books pop culture pop culture
Yeah.
books or
Yep.
grow books, in the sense that what they're doing is taking like all the available information and kind of just, for lack of a better word, kind of dumbing it down for you. But if you want to go back and really get the good information, then you need to go to those textbooks. This was my textbook for my botany class, Botany for Gardeners.
I've
It is
got
an
that in the
awesome
other
book.
room too.
Yes, yes.
That was
So
another
like
textbook.
these are great, but when you get into like the real thick like textbooks like on microbiology,
Yeah.
that's where you get the true experts that spent their whole life just studying the tiniest aspect of like one little tiny part of like microbial nutrient cycling, and that's where you get the real information. So like I would say like the problem with growers in general as a culture is we start with books like these and then we
Mhm.
stop and think, okay, I've gotten all the information and I can just parrot what's in here. But the information changes, and this information is not the whole story in a lot of cases. Like, especially this TLO book, like, props to him for the Rev when he first wrote it. But a lot of this information is either outdated or changed or wasn't 100% accurate. And he even admits in the book that, he wasn't aiming for scientific rigor with his book. So I think we need to take that into account.
Yeah. And that's kind of the nature of the beast, though. It's hard, particularly in an emerging science where, new discoveries are made all the time, whether that be because we're now looking at something new or because a new technology exists where we can narrow in closer on it. So, yeah, some of those books are hard, but I do agree. Like, they are kind of pop culture. They're good to know. They're a good foundation, but I probably like you am that sick person that loves reading textbooks and research papers. And that's where you really get the gist of them. Because again, those papers give the mechanisms, it gives the control standards, it gives the whys. Some of these things that we read, our grow environment is never going to ever be like that. So how can it actually relate to what we're doing in full thing? You did mention a great transition here, because aside from the textbooks, one of the and I consider this a textbook, but it's one of the newer ones I picked up outside of soil. And you mentioned soil microscopy is a word I can never say. But Matt Powers is someone who I just think is an evil genius or insane. I think he rides the border. Most
Okay.
really smart people do. I'm a fan. I'll say it that. I mean that in the nicest way. But he has a lot of ideas that seem out there, but are also supported. Dr. Elaine Ingham, I know he works under here. And actually, it's funny. I turned to the page of just like toxicities, lead toxicity, cadmium. And then I also picked up the teacher's hand guide to go along with it, because it always has cool like cheat codes. And I like this one because it actually has exercises you could do, which means I have exercises I could do, which reinforces the knowledge in my head. Because again, if I read it, I have to read it multiple times. If I do it, I usually get it the first time. So
Sure.
I like this. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Are you familiar with Matt Powers or any of the writings that he's done on the regenerative soil, food web type stuff? Because this is the newest, I guess, textbook I would say I've picked up on the soil of the science of soil.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with who Matt is. I have not followed
Okay.
his work closely. I am not terribly aligned with the Soil Food Web camp,
Okay.
other than to say that I truly believe microbes are very important for nutrient cycling. I tend to lean towards the mineralization side of things and making sure fertility is right. There's kind of two camps out there, and
Okay.
the bulk of soil science and soil scientists at university academic level, as well as sort of in the cannabis world, um, they believe in soil testing. Believe that if you get your fertility correct, if you have sufficiency of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all your major elements, then the microbes will show up and be present in most cases. Let's say 99% of the time. So you don't really have to
Okay.
worry about the microbes in that regard. If the other side, that soil food web side, focuses so heavily on microbes that they don't really address fertility, in my opinion. And if you were to go to a soil scientist meeting, um, no one would be in the soil food web camp. They're
Okay.
kind of fringe in that regard. That being said, man, do what works for you. I'm not here to tell anyone
Yep.
that they're wrong. That's why I believe why I believe. I think the research supports um, soil testing and that fertility, and managing pH and those sorts of things that we talk about. But I'm not here to like bash on anyone for whatever they want to put out in the world.
Yeah. Well, there's what is it, the Venn diagram where you have the bubbles and then they overlap. It's like a lot of what we're talking about does kind of fit in that middle bubble. Anyway, there's just some things outside of it. But I
Oh, and
forgot
I
where I
want
was.
to I want to learn it all because I think
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention to what other people are sharing, and you're not open minded to at least hearing it or trying it, then I think you're limiting yourself as a grower. Um, I did have one last book to share, if that's okay,
Yeah,
um,
please.
before we
What do
move
we
on
got?
from
What do we
books.
got?
The Lean
Lean.
Farm
Okay,
by
that's one
Ben
I've not
Hartman.
seen.
This book changed the way I think about growing and just as an overall life philosophy.
How so?
Very impactful. I heard him speak. I got his book. I got him on the podcast.
Oh
He
wow.
is a market
Okay.
farmer in Goshen, Indiana. He took this
Okay.
idea of lean manufacturing from Toyota
Right.
and
I remember
converted it
that.
to farming. So now, whenever I start a project or whenever I'm gardening, I think about how can I do this in the least number of steps, whether that's physical steps, mental steps. How can I reduce the amount of waste, whether that's the products that I'm using, things I'm having to buy, um, time that I'm having to spend watering, harvesting, planting, all of those things. That's what this book really makes you think about, and I'm grateful for it. It changed the way I think about gardening. Yeah,
That's
I
cool.
think
That
everyone should read
reminds
it.
me of the oh god, where did I put it now? The Elliot Coleman book. But this one was the
Mm,
one that I learned about the new organic farmer, Elliot Coleman. But this was the book that like inspired me like I want to build a food forest and like permaculture and slope
yeah,
everything and then have everything feed everything else like yeah, just I mean, again, like cool little things. Like let's see if I'm blow it up here, but just things you could take from traditional agriculture. Where if you are in like commercial markets, just like making your own seed block makers. Like
yeah,
how easy is a tool like that? How much time does that save somebody? Especially in like a craft grow. Oh my gosh, you just saved yourself like 40 minutes of labor. So little things that we can always learn. Um, so yeah, soil fertility. I had something that was really good to go there, but I can't for the life of me remember it. It'll probably come back to me, but you were going to work on amending some of the beds. So what is your process? Oh, see.
yeah. We're just gonna pivot like
I don't
that.
know. Yeah, because I can't remember. I'm like, damn it, I wanted to come back to me because I'm
You're
like,
all
that's
good.
such an insightful
So
question.
I'm an idiot. I was like, yeah, I'll just be amending my beds while I do this. And then I realized that it is super dusty and I need to be wearing a respirator or a mask. And I'm like, I can't talk through that thing. And I can't find I just found my tripod. I just looked at it. It was sitting there staring at me this whole time.
All right.
Anyway, so I can't really do it while while we're
Yeah.
talking, but
Okay.
I could put my blue mats in or
Fair
start
enough.
getting
Fair
ready.
enough. That
Yeah.
touches though on a good kind of PPE thing because I did that the other day. I actually amended with the flower bloom formula of the nutrient pack. Um, I was putting that on the other day, and yeah, I made sure that I stopped the fan inside of my tent because it'll oscillate. Uh, and I also put on just like a mask because I didn't want to breathe it in. Because when you're doing like powdered amendments and stuff like that, as much as you try not to breathe it in, you're gonna breathe it in. So having a respirator or having a mask like that is super important, just even for the smallest task of adding, a couple tablespoons of dried amendments on your stuff. You always hear the horror
Yeah.
stories about people inhaling stuff and then like growing, I don't know, turning into Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I was bad yesterday. I was getting
No, I think your audio cut out there. I see you, but the audio cut out. You might have got a text or you might have got a phone call. Hopefully you can hear me. But we've all done that. I mean, how many times has somebody been like cutting wood or sanding something and you're just like, yeah, I should put on a respirator, but I won't. And then he has no idea we can't hear him. Because he's having a good old time over there right now. Dad, oh my goodness. You can't hear me. Let's see. What should I do? I'm going to send him a text. Oh, there he is. Yep. Microphone. Tad.
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was just talking away. Sorry about that.
No, I'm glad. Go, please carry on. You look like you were having fun there. I was just saying, PP, wear your masks, guys. Wear your masks.
Yeah. And I was saying that I had some Bavaria that I was pulling out for a buddy, and I wasn't wearing a mask, and I just held my breath, which was not an acceptable way of doing it. So I should have thrown a mask on, but hopefully I don't die in the next few days. But I do have a respirator here. I wore it while I amended this bed. I'm going to amend that bed. As soon as we get off this call, I'll dump it and have the mask on to re-amend it. But I thought I could get my blue mats pulled out and prepped while we're chatting here too. So
yep. So with your amendments, are you just dumping it in the middle and then spreading it out by hand there? Or are you taking a little scooper and trying to evenly, sprinkle it around and then scratch it in?
So I would, what I did was I spread it out pretty evenly across the top as I could. And then I just got in there with my hands and just really dug it in.
Yeah. Okay.
To where you can still, you probably can't see that, but it's a little bit lighter in some spots here. And then what I'm going to do is it already has good moisture, but I'm going to set up the blue mats today, and then they'll be ready to go when I get the plants in here.
Very cool. Moisture.
Yeah, because they need the moisture to break down the amendments. If this was totally just bone dry, it wouldn't really do a lot of good.
No. And I know you were mentioning Brandon earlier from KIS Organics, one of the awesome customer service people there. He actually came on and did a Just One Thing episode with me about capillary action, which kind of helped understand some uptake of the water and, the soil structure. And I think blue mats fall right into that because the goal with the blue mats is just to keep it like a steady level. There really isn't much dry back or like over saturated periods with the blue mats, correct?
Yeah, keep it sort of a more even moisture level in the beds, and we find that helps a ton with just keeping the microbes happy, which cycles the nutrients better. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking chat for you guys. If you have any questions, let's see here. Looks like State 3 TV has another one. Let me get the big thing here. Where to go? It says, I would love to hear what amendments Tad suggests for low heavy metals. And I will say, too, last episode was an awesome one where we covered specifically some of the dry amendments and the concerns growers may have as far as like accumulation of certain things. But is there anything, that you can think of off the top of your head?
The first thing I think of is insect frost. That tends to be one of the cleanest amendments for the fertility that you get out of it. It's kind of my go-to in a lot of ways. It's probably my favorite. But beyond that, not a ton. Other than if you go on our website, you can see the heavy metal levels of a lot of the inputs. They've got tests on there for a lot of stuff, so you can kind of go check and compare brand names because we'll always list the brand that we're using, so you can see if that matches up, and then at least you'll know. And that's just about managing it, not letting it get too high or too in your grow. But yeah.
Okay, I'm just scrolling up here. Cheddar Bob says I've been missing his questions, and I'm scrolling infinitely, and I don't see another one. So maybe Cheddar Bob, if you can restate your question, I would love to try to get that too for us to answer. Meaning I read it. Let's see here. No, he just put smiley face. Okay. Type 1 grower says, hey, Tad, when building soil, what is your general NPK goal for cannabis? Do you have one? And I want to just maybe start that with some of the things that I've seen now. Okay, so traditionally, you know, it's like in the day, we'd hear like the 20-20-20 tomato food from Miracle Grow was your option. And then we've learned, you know, that the N, the P, the K, we want it in different ratios and potentially at different times. But I look at bottles and, you know, numbers are cool, right? So the higher the number, the more impressive you think it is. So a lot of bottle nutrients that I see are, you know, in the teens. They're in sometimes the 20s. And this isn't exclusive to the nutrient pack. It's, you know, other organic amendments I've seen. But like the NPK is like 2.5, 3.5, 1. I'm like, that's weak sauce. So how does that actually work compared to like a 20-20-20 bottle, man?
Yeah. Well, it's all about application rate. So you would have to use more of something that's 2% nitrogen than something that's 20% nitrogen. But yeah, it's really all about balance. In terms of optimal rates, you know, we have optimal rates for soil and tissue on those tests. I haven't correlated them to percentages, but if you send me an email, I can send you what our, actually, I mean, it's right on the label, what our percentages are on our nutrient pack right now. So you could.
Well, I just read them off,
yeah.
2.5, 3.5, and 1. Available phosphate. Chad needs new glasses. Soluble potash. Calcium,
yeah, and I won't say that, you know, I think that those levels will get you pretty darn close because they translate well from what we've seen. But honestly, when I first created it, I didn't know I didn't have a target in mind initially. It just kind of worked out well.
Well, that's right. You guessed well.
And I mean, we've refined it since, but yeah, that was the first one with a guess. Initial one was sort of a guess, and then I just kind of slowly refined it.
And that's the benefit of testing on scale too. It's like you've been able to collect a lot of data from multiple different environments. So that, I mean, again, data is what we're after. So the more we can get, the better picture we have as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I do see a Cheddar Bob question here. Now, I do not know if you've used these or have an opinion. But I know Cheddar Bob, his amazing wife does some awesome homeopathy type work, and she knows a lot about medicinal uses for different plants. She actually has a show on the FCPO2 channel, which is an awesome show. Check that out. But his question, I'm assuming, relates to her work because he's asking, he says, what proper sentence structure, Cheddar, come on now. He said, what does Tad know about cleavers and chickweed as companion plants, or would they be harmful? They're highly medicinal. So harmful in a sense, maybe there's exudates that they put out that would harm the roots of the cannabis or microbial activity, or is there another harmful potential or another potential for harm from other companion plants? It makes me curious. Choking out the roots, competition, nutrient uptake, I guess those could all be harmful.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to add, Cheddar Bob. Honestly, I've never really trialed those to tell you. I don't tend to use a lot of companion plants indoors. Hey, Keith. Good to see you on here, buddy. I don't use a lot of companion plants indoors, so I can't really say. One of the reasons I don't is because I like to, when I just did here, is really get my hands in there and mix the nutrients back into the bed more thoroughly, and that's really hard to do when you have like a cover crop of companion plants. But I haven't used those, and I would have to do a little more research, honestly, for outdoor. But yeah, it's a great question.
Okay, yeah, Fried Piper just put up mustards probably wouldn't be great because that is one that I have heard that can harm the microbes or the root zone. It's something it doesn't agree with cannabis, so stay away from that. But that was good. Oh,
yeah, can I touch on that actually, really quickly?
Please.
So mustards are natural fumigants. They produce a a chemical compound that essentially kills other microbes and things in the soil. And so for people who are using mustard seed meal, I know this is something that recently came around through, I think through Jeremy at Build the Soil. It's been around the industry
Whoops.
in the ag world for a long time. It's never really gained traction. One of the things to keep in mind with a mustard product, because I looked pretty deeply into this, and I chose not to offer it to our customer base because when you use something like this, yes, it will kill fungus, but it's also going to have a non-target organism effect, meaning it's also going to kill a ton of other things in your soil. It's not specific, like it's not like BTI that's very specific to fungus gnats. So I don't like to put things on that are going to, at least not my soil, at least it's going to kill a lot of things because we can target these things, these pests, with products like Bavaria or BTI more specifically rather than essentially fumigating our soils and really killing off a lot of good biolife in there too. So keep that in mind if you decide to use them.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. When we're trying to build these populations in the soil, we want a specific thing, not a generalist, because again, you're almost eliminating the work that you've done. And another, I don't know, relatable example is just kind of like flushing the soil in organic beds. That's not something you really want to do because you want to keep a lot of the nutrients and things in there, correct? That's such a general
sorry,
question.
I was reading
180.
I was reading the comments.
That's fine.
Sorry, I got distracted. Can you say that again? I'll listen better.
Yep. No, it's all right. I was just giving an example of because with a generalist, you're ruining a lot of what you've worked to create. Sometimes spending money to create this stuff, and I equated that to flushing in a bed or a living soil. It's where that may apply to a synthetic grow. It's not good for the living soil grow because you're going to wash away a lot of the stuff that you spent time cultivating and growing and like the generalist. So that was the example, the connection I was making there.
Yeah, if you were to do something like that, I'd probably want to come back through with a compost tea or earthworm casting application afterwards, watered in to try and get some of those microbes active again, or even culture indigenous microbes if you're into the whole KNF thing. That would be a good option too. I just want to add to Rusty Nails here. I am not anti-cover crops as even indoors. I know I come across that way. I just want to say, I think what Steve Cantwell is doing is really brilliant, and it works well in a high desert environment for him. I just think this idea that cover crops universally is a good idea is not something I believe in. So we work with a lot of growers that use our soils that do run cover crops. And I just make sure that they're aware of the pros and cons associated with it, because there are pros and there are some cons. So as long as you think through that risk benefit analysis and it comes out on the positive side of running them, then I fully support it. So I don't want to come across like I'm just anti-cover crop. So if I am, I apologize. That's not my goal. And outdoors, I fully support them. So, and I think they're awesome.
And being familiar with Rusty Nails. Rusty Nails is a supporter. He watches he or she watches a ton of shows. Likes to take things very literal or sometimes interject words into people's mouths when that's not exactly what I meant. So take no offense there. Rusty, I do appreciate you watching. Thank you for that. And
me too.
Thank you for segueing, because I think that was episode 5 or 4 or 5 we did where we talked about cover crops, some of the pros and some of the cons, when and where. So that was something that we did talk about as well. Okay, Rusty is a he, no weird pronouns. All right, thank you, Rusty. I do appreciate you watching, dude. And you do stimulate some good conversation, whether it's on the screen or just in chat. So appreciate that.
I got a slightly controversial take since I'm reading through the comments
hot
here.
take.
And people are talking about Athena.
Yes.
I'd be curious in the chat so here's my things with Athena, or specifically any bottled nutrient. As a grower, I think if you're a good salt grower, you can produce quality product, quality flower. But if you can only grow with one bottled nutrient line, then I think you're very limited as a grower. I think you need to be able to understand why Athena works, and then be able to make adjustments for different media and different conditions, different water sources, those sorts of things. You shouldn't be able to just do RO water and Athena and call yourself a master grower, kind of thing. And I think that when we talk about using bottled nutrients in general, you're paying that company to mix for you and essentially ship you a ton of water with a tiny amount of fertility, sort of thing. So go with a powdered version if you want. Like something like Jack's would be my choice, not just because I like the people over there, but I think you're getting more bang for your buck. So and I think all the weed kind of tastes the same. Like you can get Athena weed anywhere now, but where do you get like really unique, awesome Chad Westport living soil weed is commercially kind of thing is the question.
Yeah.
So, but Athena's a good company. They built quite a following, and they do get, they grow good plants. Like they're not the plants that I want to grow, but I don't knock on anyone for using it in
Yeah.
that regard. So I'm not here to
Different
bash them, but
strokes,
yeah.
different strokes, different folks, different motivations too. A lot of people have different motivations for why they grow, and that can relate over into the methodology that you use. And I think that's why a lot of gosh, I remembered what I forgot like half hour ago because it relates back to it. Because I was going to say this why a lot of like craft or home growers like a lot of the organic living soil, because you know anecdotally we are, and sometimes terpene testing too, we are squeezing out better flavors, better profiles. But what I meant to say then and why it just came up now is because commercial Steve Cantwell is an exception, but it's not widely adopted as far as this type of practice. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of why textbooks are awesome and some of the other books are maybe just like pop culture. Textbooks and academia, they take a long time before, at least in my opinion, and from what I've seen, they take a lot of time to agree that something's good. It's not the first study that proves maybe there is a benefit to it. It's not the second study that maybe corroborates the first one, but they want a multitude of evidence before they change the opinion or like say, okay, this is the best way. And that goes back to commercial farmers too. It's that old catch-22. If I want something new, but it has to be proven. How do you have something new that's proven? But that is why I do enjoy the textbooks again, because for a lot of people in academia, and Bruce Bugbee is an example for the evolution of like lighting technology and what we know there and what he's agreed to at certain times of the conversation. Academia really wants it solidly proven before they'll go down that road. Is that something that you tend to see as well? Whereas maybe this pop culture book will adopt the anecdotal evidence before the actual academia is going to say, okay, we have enough support now to say, this is why this happens.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes research ends up supporting some of these concepts, and sometimes it absolutely refutes it. So,
right.
Yeah, everyone's got to do their own research. You brought up Bruce. I thought that was an interesting one because he recently just came out with some more information that plants can handle upwards of 2,000 ppfd.
And we thought 15 was the limiting before, where we started seeing like negative returns, right?
I think it's closer to 1,200.
Okay.
But basically, he's pushing to see how much light the plants can really take.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm never going to really want to go higher than 900 in my room. He's doing this in a growth chamber with mineral salts, chemical fertilizers, really pushing the plants. I'm trying to grow organically in living soil. These lights, I could hit 13, 1400, no problem. But when I have, it always causes problems. I really want to stay probably closer to 900. Probably 800 last run because I didn't have any CO2. I'm going to try adding CO2 this run, so I think I could bump it up a little bit. But I think we have to take this research is being done, and then translate it to our environment.
Yes.
And I think that's just something. It's kind of unrelated to what you're talking about, but an important point.
Well, I did kind of touch on that earlier too, that some of these studies that we will point to as, evidence for why we do certain things are conducted in environments that we'll never be able to replicate. So does that invalidate, the findings in itself because we're not able to get the same control? And that's just kind of a hypothetical question there. But yeah, and the two where I wanted to go with that is, again, the purpose. We hear, okay, let's say 2000 ppfd is going to build you more biomass. Is that our goal? Is biomass our goal? Biomass may not be the goal of somebody who's working for concentrates and wants particular style resin heads. So again, there's a lot of variables, as we always say, with any piece of information that comes out, because again, increased yields. Okay, what does that mean? Biomass or cannabinoids? What are we talking? So yeah, looking beyond, scratching the surface. I realize we're already at an hour, but do you have more to add? You look like you wanted to say something there.
I was just gonna say, like, I think the reason that why we do living soil is because, in this soil are all these. Not only do we have fertility and good physical structure, but we have all these microorganisms that are cycling nutrients for us and making them plant available and bringing out, all these aspects of the plant that we can't just say the plant needs, what is it, 19 essential elements, and think that we
Right.
figured out the whole process. I think there's more there, and I think that's the reason that like consumers, heavy consumers of cannabis gravitate towards living soil grown weed that's grown well. Now, that's not to say that it's going to win every time. Like poorly grown living soil weed, I think a well-grown Athena weed would crush it. Like I'm not,
Yeah.
but if we were to put like top shelf quality side by side, that's where I think organics wins out in a lot of cases. But you hear these arguments of like indoor versus outdoor, sun grown, chemical versus organics. I think a lot of it, to me, just comes down to the quality of the grower. If can they pay attention and grow a really high quality plant, and and genetics. So grower skill and genetics is way more important than what type of growing you're doing. But then if we keep narrowing it down from there, I would
Yeah.
say I think living soil produces some of the best quality product that I've seen out there.
Yeah, it
On the
definitely
market.
produces great stuff. It does. And as a guy who claims to hear the difference between an MP3 and a piece of vinyl, I subscribe to this theory as well too. So oh shoot, we can wrap it up with that. Everybody, Brandon's in the chat. I see Brandon. We were talking about you earlier. He says I love textbooks, and I don't doubt that because you're a pretty dang smart dude. And I'd love to get you on here. We'll have to coordinate. Tab. We've got to coordinate next month with your travel,
maybe
and my travel. Figure out
maybe
what's gonna happen
Brandon
here.
can fill in for me here one of these weeks coming up, and you guys can have a chat. That would be fun. I could listen in on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Listen in from the airplane. But yeah, I'm gonna be gone for pretty much almost all of the month too. We'll figure this out behind the scenes. Nobody cares. They tuned in.
So, Chad, here's what I'm going to
Q&A.
try and do. So, and this is what I'm doing with Bryant too. So, if one of us is unavailable, because I do 3 p.m. Pacific with Bryant on Wednesdays and 2 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays with you, I'm going to try and keep him going. So, even if like he's busy, I'm going to try and do it, and vice versa. So, like if you're gone, maybe I can just host it. So, hopefully, some of your subscribers can come over and check out the Q&A on my end that same day. Maybe Brandon and I'll have a chat kind of thing. And then if I'm gone, you could still do the Q&A without me too.
That'd be right. We'll work on that. And two, for people who aren't aware, we are simulcasting. You catch this both on the Chad Westport YouTube channel as well as the KIS Organics YouTube channel. I've got links to both of them down in the show notes. Also have a link to the KIS Organics or Tad's Instagram. If you had some specific questions, hit up KIS. You might actually get Brandon, who we were just talking about. So yeah, plenty of ways to get a hold of us. Brandon's like, what did you do to me? No. Just joking. We love you, buddy. That'll be fun. Guys, girls, if you have questions for the show, for Tad, for myself, let us know in the comments. We will be happy to get them on the show, just like we did this one with Dr. Chronic's question. So I thank you guys for tuning in. Tad, any final words as far as maybe where to find you, what you've got upcoming, anything before we sign out this week?
I don't think so. I'm headed to Australia here soon for a conference, pharmaceutical conference, actually, because it's pharmaceutical down there right now. So that'll be interesting. I'll be in Melbourne for 10 days if anyone from Australia happens to be on here. Other than that, I'm honored for the opportunity, Chad. I really appreciate you doing the show with me, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Awesome, dude. My pleasure. Thank you for making the time. I enjoy it, and I know everybody in chat enjoys it too. Guys, I've got to drop the Westport Posse April 2nd. That's going to be on the Daga.Garden website. I will be doing a live on my channel this Saturday, telling you a little bit more about it and a little more of the details. So tune in there if you want to find out about the drop coming up. And until next Tuesday, let us know your questions. Everybody, you have a great day, and we will see you next time. Peace out.